This is Hemet.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist podcast. If you like what you're listening to, please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist podcast. And we're going to get started with a few thank yous to some of our more recent donors. And if we haven't gotten to you, we will soon. But special thanks to Brent S., Madoop J., Sarah M., Peter and Kathy, Megan B., Sasha D., Nancy G., Sherry D., Daniel F., and Daniel L. Thank you so much for your support.
Thanks, everyone.
And we are coming to you
in the same room as each other.
I know. It's been like a year.
It's genuinely weird. Has been a year. Dottie has just been following around Hemet like her long-lost best friend, even though he has made it abundantly clear he's not like into her vibe.
Not at all. She hears it.
She's genuinely just walking around the house making noises because she's so happy. It would be very cute if we weren't recording right now.
It's more human contact or animal contact than I've had in a long time. So I was taking a walk this morning because, like, nice day out. There's no one at home that I got to take care of.
Well, Dr. Fauci told us we have to take a walk every day.
So I'm like, what time can I go that I'm not going to have to do any work or anything? And it's like, oh, late afternoon, the news dies down, all is good. Today, I was like, I know we're going to record. So you know what? I'll go in the morning. I did everything I need to do. So I'll just go for like an hour and everything will be fine. And as I'm halfway through, like, alert, alert, alert from 97 different sources saying Liberty University is suing Jerry Falwell Jr.
I was one of those sources that I just immediately like got a push notification and just screen grabbed it and sent it to him and like, hey, hey.
Yeah.
And you didn't usually when I send you things like that, you're like, oh, I kind of had an inkling that this was coming.
Yeah.
This was not the case.
No, this is something that we're taping this on Friday afternoon. This was filed on Thursday night, I think. And so like the journalist didn't even really get a hold of it until this morning. But here's what Liberty University is mad about in general. They're suing Falwell for $10 million. And basically, here's the idea. Their lawsuit says Jerry Falwell Jr. breached his contract with them. He misled the school's board. He concealed his alcohol problem.
Whoa.
It's a whole variety of things that said, we were paying you to run this school, and you were hiding things from us that we should have known in order to judge you accurately. One example is like they renegotiated his contract that basically said, if you fire me, here's what severance package I would get. Knowing full well he was doing the sort of things that would get him fired and not telling the board about it. And by the way, his severance package is $10.5 million. So, haha.
Whoa.
So
I've gotten fired a lot, and I've never gotten $10.5 million.
If you could run a Christian university, you're all set for life.
Just call me. I'm sure I'd be very good at it.
You wouldn't be worse than Falwell, though. That's
what
the
I'm
thing.
saying. If we're just giving white dudes the opportunity to fuck things up, give me an opportunity to fuck things up. Equality. So
if you need a reminder, because this is just, it's been almost 6 months now of maybe more, of just nonstop scandal involving Falwell. Let me give you a really quick rundown of this. This is a guy who's starting in August. That's how recent this was.
Jesus.
August wasn't forever ago.
No.
Early August, he posts a picture on Instagram with his fly unzipped and his belly out and his hand holding what he called black water or something.
Oh boy, I forgot about that.
Around his arm around a woman who wasn't his wife. And that was like the mild scandal, it turned out. He got caught liking photos on like Instagram or something of young women who, some of whom I think were Liberty students, like on the beach or something.
God.
Like, that's creepy. Then we find out that this guy he had a real estate deal with, which always sounded shady,
of course.
a.k.a. the pool boy, Giancarlo Granda.
How could I
he
forget?
Told Reuters that I've been sleeping with Becky Falwell, Jerry's wife, for many, many years, and Jerry's been in the corner watching us.
Oh, yeah.
And then we find out Becky Falwell has been like seducing boys on campus which sounds more scandalous than it's creepy and wrong.
Yeah.
Because the guys weren't asking for it, and it was
And
weird.
Were they of age? I can't remember.
They were of age.
Okay.
That wasn't the issue, but it's also like, you're not only an older woman I don't know, you're the president of the school's wife.
There's a little bit of a power imbalance there, I'd say.
Yeah, and the power imbalance. And then Falwell resigned from Liberty, and then weeks later he fell down the stairs because he got hammered, and she called 911 about that.
Boy, it's all coming back to me.
I know.
I'm like Celine Dion
and then we get to October.
We're only in October.
In October. Jerry Falwell sues Liberty for defamation. He sues Liberty for making him look bad. Yeah. And it's like, buddy, have you seen the headlines?
Yeah.
That was you.
Yeah.
And then by December, he dropped the lawsuit. Which of course he did. He had no case.
So this isn't a countersuit. This is its own.
This is its own little thing.
Lawsuit.
Because now Yesterday Liberty is suing him, and they actually have arguably legit claims to be mad at him about. I don't know how it'll go down, but I'm thoroughly amused. By the way,
love to see them fight.
Thursday, I believe. Liberty confirmed that Jerry Falwell's son, Trey, who was working at the school as an administrator, was no longer working there. I don't know how those things are connected or if they're connected. But Falwell was in the news again yesterday with Liberty because they're like, yeah, we did get rid of his son. And now this.
How many university presidents can you name, let alone hear about them in headlines all the time? Like, I don't even know Ball State's president, and I think they just emailed me today.
Yeah. I could not tell you the president of my alma mater right now because it's not relevant.
No.
But at Liberty, he's like his name is synonymous. His dad founded the school. I've said this before, but imagine how effed up you have to be the embarrassing Jerry Falwell. Because his father was the guy that blamed 9/11 on lesbians.
Sure, which, to be fair, they earned. No, but it really, it's so
imagine
bad.
being known for that after you die. That's one of the lines in the first paragraph of your obituary. And then your own son is like, oh no, that's nothing. I got this.
Hold my beer.
So
hold my dark water.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn it, that would have been funny if I said it first.
So there's Liberties. There's the news out of Liberty today. Okay, I wanted to talk about something that's relatively serious and which I've gotten backlash for, and normally I wouldn't care, except this one bothered me more. So Richard Dawkins this week, he starts tweeting. I'm going to read you his tweet, and then we're going to break this thing down line by line. I can't remember what prompted this, but this is a standalone tweet. In 2015, Rachel Dolezal, a white chapter president of the NAACP, was vilified for identifying as black. Some men choose to identify as women, and some women choose to identify as men. You will be vilified if you deny that they literally are what they identify as. Discuss. That's the tweet.
I can't believe Richard Dawkins has been reduced to being like the debate me motherfucker in a Facebook thread. You know? I have such complicated feelings about Richard Dawkins because I do think that the shit he wrote, the things he did, he changed people's views on religion in the 90s, right? God delusion.
Religion, the aughts, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But science and evolution in the
I've read
70s, 80s, 90s.
And I read his book, Greatest Show on Earth, which is about evolution, which is incredible. He's a gifted science communicator who got a platform and was able to talk about atheist issues when people really weren't able to do that. However, we sort of as a movement, so to speak, and it's always tricky, right? It's always tricky to call the atheism movement because we're just a bunch of knuckleheads wandering around trying to not get in people's way about their own religion. So it is, we've just passed him by. He is no longer, it's like J.K. Rowling. They both kind of gave us these works that were very useful and very formulative to many, many, many people. And then they've either gotten so famous that they have sort of lost an accountability network around them, or they've always been terrible bigots, and this is just the first time we're hearing about them. I'll let you guess which one it is. I don't. But yeah, this sucks. It's disheartening. It is divisive for no reason. It's bad faith, this whole... I mean, obviously he said discuss. He didn't say debate me, but like, that is what it is to be a woman on the internet. Is like, you exist and some dude is like, debate me about this thing. Like, no, I'm not going to debate whether somebody's existence is valid or not. That's actually not part of it. That's not up for discussion.
The thing that I got pushback for is I felt like he was denying the basic humanity of trans people.
Yeah.
And people said, disagree with him if you want, but he's not dehumanizing trans people. But I don't know what to make of that statement if it's not dehumanizing, and I'll try to justify it. But also, to get to your point, it is so weird that one of the best long-form science communicators ever is also one of the worst short-form communicators ever.
Like, it's Trumpian in that I just want to, like, call his assistant and be like, just, like, turn off the Wi-Fi on his phone, let him just, like, write things and then think he tweeted them out and then never think about them again.
So first, I want to be like, a trans person is not a man choosing to identify as a woman. That already, you're denying who they are. Right. That's not what a trans person is. They didn't wake up one day and say, let me decide what clothes to put on today. That's literally the right-wing interpretation of what a trans person is.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Is that, like, when people frame things like this, it is giving value to right-wing talking points, which they're not. And we fall into that all the time as people on the left. We see it in fucking Democratic debates.
And right-wing people retweeted this and quoted, and they're like, yeah, this guy's on our side. Like, come on, man. You're giving them fodder. And Rachel Dolezal, by the way, who, if you need a refresher there, she passed herself off as black when people called her black, like she didn't deny it. Right. And it was only when she was confronted, like, your parents are both white. She's like, your point? You're white. And then she's like, well, I self-identify as black. And that's a different debate to be had. But the point is, she was lying about, like, what that means in order to get ahead in that world where being black could give her a boost. And trans people are not lying by comparing those racism to transphobia or whatever it is, those two worlds. He's suggesting trans people are lying about one thing, just like she lied about something. Right. And if you don't accept their lie, then you will be vilified. Like, there's no comparison. These are two very different things.
Well, and the problem with the trans community isn't that people are going after them and are wrongly vilified and witch hunted. It's that the trans community is almost, like, is in danger almost perpetually just by being who they are. So, like, us debating whether they're allowed to exist or whatever is not helpful, and in fact, it's quite harmful.
I didn't like the language he used of they're choosing to identify. They're not. They're correcting a mistake. Right. If he spoke with trans people, and he would tell you he's worked with them, but clearly not closely enough, because I don't know, all the trans people I've talked to would make it very clear, like, I was born wrong. They assigned me the wrong gender. I'm fixing that now. Yeah. It's not choosing to identify as something I'm not. It's being true to myself.
Yeah, actually, and it's really interesting that this is coming up because I've been doing some copywriting for a medical community. A hospital system is the word I was looking for. A hospital system in our area, and I'm redoing some of the web pages, and part of it was updating their, like, facial plastics stuff. And at one point, like, a doctor had crossed out, like, facial feminization, like, parentheses, trans surgery, and replaced it with gender affirming surgery. And, like, everybody in the fucking medical community is up to date. Not everybody, that's not fair. But, like, people in the medical community are bringing themselves up to date. Like, he's just regressing points that have been trodden and are not important and are harmful. And I'm fucking sick of it.
I should say American Atheists put out a statement. They have no connection or affiliation to Dawkins other than Dawkins is, like, the go-to atheist for a lot of reporters. But they put out a statement that they explicitly said is written by one of our trans staffers, which basically, I don't have it in front of me, but it criticized Dawkins for what he said. the American Humanist Association basically echoed it. The Secular Coalition for America echoed what AA put out there. The Center for Inquiry, which has a lot of staffers I really like. It's an organization I like. But they're the ones who merged with the Dawkins Foundation. They run his stuff. He's on their board. They have been conspicuously silent, which I don't know what the discussions are behind the scenes, but that's disappointing.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming the staff because, again, I know them. I know how they feel about this stuff, too.
Well, it's an impossible place he's put them in.
Yes. And I want them to say something, too. It's not my decision, ultimately. But again, the problem here is, look, Dawkins isn't our God. He doesn't owe us anything. We don't owe him anything.
Right.
But it is disappointing when someone you admire for the reasons we talked about, because his books about science are really amazing.
Yeah.
It's just disappointing that he's perpetuating these right-wing bullshit transphobic talking points.
Well, and it's another instance that I see all the time of, cis het white guys wanting to make people's identity into an intellectual exercise.
Yeah.
And that's not
What's
fair
there to
or
discuss?
Helpful. It's nothing worth discussing.
His last... the last word in his tweet is discuss.
Like,
what? Discuss what?
We're not your fucking, biology 102 lecture hall.
I literally got an email from someone who said, I'm going to write an article in a secular publication defending Dawkins on this, and I wanted to know if that's problem one.
Yeah.
But he basically said, do you want to do a back and forth where we have our points and hash them out? And I wrote him back, and I'm like, no, because there's nothing to debate here.
Nor are you the person who should be the white knight of trans rights.
Yeah, seriously.
Why would they ask you? No offense. You're very smart, I guess, but I don't think you're the person I would go to for insight in the world of trans experience.
As you should not.
I barely look at you for the insight of male experience.
Thank you. And that was my favorite part about that is after I said no, that was followed up with, so when are we doing an interview about another project he has coming out? And I'm like, we're not now.
This isn't,
I'm not interested.
Well, and that's the problem is people are so flippant about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Of it's not a big thing to disagree about, so we can just let it go. But sorry, if you're anti-trans, if you are using the trans community either as a punching bag or as a debate tactic, I don't think we have a lot in common, and I don't think we need to work together.
A lot of the stuff I tend to post, which is church-state separation issues and whatnot, I mean, there's not a lot of backlash I get from my mostly atheist followers. Right. But on this one in particular, there were definitely two camps about this online, and a lot of course, Dawkins defenders on this particular subject. And I'm not, again, I have no desire to fight these people on Twitter of all places, but it was amazing to me both the number of atheists with substantive followings who were right on board with saying, fuck you, what are you saying, Dawkins? Right. And the number of people with, I say this derisively, and I know it's mean, which is the number of people with no profile pictures and very few followers who are very adamant about having this fight.
Eggs back in the day. Remember when your Twitter profile was an egg? If you
the people who haven't generated any attention because no one wants to follow them are very eager to pick a fight on this. And by the way, I should say, do I have it in front of me? I'll find this. Dawkins issued a day later a follow-up tweet on that first one where he said, this is 2 days later. I'll quote this as he wrote it. I do not intend to disparage trans people. I see that my academic question has been misconstrued as such, and I deplore this. It was also not my intent to ally in any way with Republican bigots in the U.S. now exploiting this issue. Okay, fine. I get that you don't want to be used by the right wing, which he opposes.
Yeah.
But even though they totally used it for their advantage. But also, what is there to discuss? I still don't know what he wants us to discuss. Yeah. Are trans people lying? No, that's not a discussion to have. That is falling into those right-wing tropes.
Yeah, and all of that shit is the legwork he should have done before posting something like that, Yes.
I know you don't have to think long and hard before you tweet,
right.
But if you're going to tweet something like that...
And if you have a platform like that.
Yes.
It's irresponsible.
It's an unwritten rule that if enough people follow you, you should think a little bit before you tweet.
Yeah, and when somebody points out that, because I think the other thing is their hackles are immediately up when somebody says, oh, you got this wrong, especially if they're a fundamentally smart person like Richard Dawkins, who's used to being smartest guy in the room, which is an exhausting personality trait anyway. And so they have this thing that if somebody pushes back on a thing, like, I don't blame Richard Dawkins for not understanding the depth and nuance of trans issues. I barely do, and I'm working really hard on it. But, like, oh, God, I don't know, like, I completely lost my train of thought. I'm so mad at him.
He has another book coming out soon, and normally that'd be the sort of thing that would be very little effort on my part to say, hey, he has a book out. You should check it out. And now it's like, I genuinely don't want anything to do with this guy. Yeah. And again, he owes me nothing. Like, whatever. I liked some of his books. I could say that about a lot of people whose work I no longer like.
Yeah, we both met him. He was perfectly fine. Yeah. Like, it's just, well, you interviewed him, right? Or introduced him, anyway, it doesn't matter. I've known
him, I've communicated with him for almost 2 decades in various capacities. I wouldn't pretend to think he knows me or anything like that. But I definitely have worked with a lot of people who work closely with him.
Right.
And again, the silence on these sort of things. And I should say, this is not like a tweet that came out of nowhere, because he's done this before. Let me read you something. This is something he wrote in 2015. Another tweet. Is trans woman a woman? Question mark.
2015?
2015. Purely semantic. If you define by chromosomes, no. If by self-identification, yes. I call her she out of courtesy.
Oh, you're so fucking brave, Dawkins. Oh my God. Like, the thing is, first of all, gender and sex are different things. Gender is a spectrum. All of that you and I know, and generously we're idiots. And he's a fucking biologist or a zoologist or something. He should understand the difference.
That is the response that pissed me off the most, that I didn't respond to, which was, excuse me, he is a world famous biologist. Yeah. Therefore, he would know about this. What do you know about this, blogger? It's like, you don't need to be an expert in any of this to understand basic humanity.
Yeah, and like, I would say gender identity falls much more into like anthropological studies and cultural studies than it does for biology, because that's just not how any of this works.
It's not just Dawkins. It's all the Dawkins adjacent scientists and atheists with large platforms who all seem to take on this same framing of these issues, where it's like, I oppose the religious right.
Right.
But on this issue.
Right.
Like, let me tell you about this article on Quillette that I saw. It's like,
I don't know
it's
what that
all.
Is, but I bet it was funny.
Yeah, sure it was.
What's Quillette?
You don't want to know.
Oh, okay.
But it's all the same people espousing the same, like, contrarian, like, they're so used to being the opposite of the public when it comes to God, and they suddenly get this idea that I must be against the public in everything. The public is wrong about LGBTQ people. Let me talk about that.
And on top of that, it is a sense of, I am used to being right because I have done my research and I have a wealth of knowledge in biology or whatever. However, sometimes when you're always the smartest guy in the room, you confuse your opinions for a fact, if that makes sense. You're just so used to being like, well, when I say this, it's supported by X. But then you say things that are supported by nothing, but still have the same amount of confidence that, like, well, if I said it, I know me, I'm very smart indeed. And that's a huge problem with, like, men in general, is this sort of like, well, this thing is bad because I don't like it, as opposed to, like, maybe this thing wasn't for me, or I don't understand this thing and it's out of my realm. It's just these dudes who have to be right about fucking everything, and it's exhausting.
A longtime contributor to my site, Richard Wade, who is done a lot of therapy and stuff, like, as a therapist, who knows these types of things, and he's always a voice of reason for me. He wrote this that I really appreciated. Mr. Dawkins ended his thick-skulled statement with the imperative discuss, as if it's an assignment from a professor to his students. Instead of people discussing the issues he thinks he's raised about transgender people, people are mainly discussing him. and his frustrating and embarrassing tendency to keep sticking his foot in his mouth. That is the issue he really should examine. He's a good example of how our intelligence is never seamless or free from gaps and holes. Even brilliant people say and do stupid, ignorant, or insensitive things, and no matter how well educated we are, there's always a need for shutting up and sitting down in the student's chair again. Unfortunately, fame often interferes with the humility needed to do that.
Who was that? That was
It's Richard Wade. He's
very
awesome.
good, Richard. That's great.
All right.
Wow.
I got a different story for you, back to bashing
Great.
the people who typically deserve it. So in Wyoming, Wyoming is one of the worst states in the country when
Period.
it comes to suicide rates. They have a very high suicide rate for young people.
That's surprising.
It's not just one of the highest suicide rates in the country. In 2018, by one metric, it was the worst. It's also the only state without an in-state suicide prevention hotline.
Oh, interesting.
So, they need to deal with this.
And this is, I'm sorry, by percent of population, right?
Yes,
Because Wyoming
per
has
capita.
14 people.
Yeah. And the rates are very high.
Huh.
And so, and this is a legislature that is overwhelmingly Republican, there was a bill on the table, House Bill 62, that would have required public schools in the state, and I'm quoting here, to include suicide prevention instruction in a health and safety program.
Okay.
And that's pretty much all it said. It's kind of like, we want the schools to make sure you include suicide prevention training in health class, however you want to do it, as long as you want to do it. We'll leave the details up to you, but we want to make sure you are helping students deal with these thoughts if they have them. And how do you deal with that? And it's totally sensible bill. There's no reason anyone should oppose it. When it was discussed in a House Education Committee in January,
This is going.
it passed on a 6-3 vote out of committee, which it passed. Also, why are 3 people against this? But okay, it passed. So then the question is, it's now up for a vote by the state House. It failed, 25-34. And it's like, why? Why would this bill fail? What's the controversy here? And very few people are paying attention to state politics, much less state politics in Wyoming.
Right.
So you're not going to get a statement out of all of these lawmakers saying, here's why I voted this way. But there is video during the discussion about this bill. And one of the lawmakers who voted against the bill and offered his opinion as to why he didn't want to vote for it was a guy, state rep. His name is John Baer, spelled exactly as you would think. And here I'm going to read you what he said as to why he's against this bill. In one classroom of the school, we are currently teaching the students that they evolved and that we come from chance. So we're teaching evolution. And so, in another classroom, and especially if this particular bill passes, we will be teaching them, as we should, that they are loved, that they are cared for, and that we do not want them to take their life, that we want them around. Well, I just ask you to think about when an adolescent mind is in the pit of despair for whatever reason, which of those two things are they going to go with? Which of those two truths that we have taught them, and we have expected our teachers to teach them, which of the two will they go with? Unquote. And if I may paraphrase that,
I have no idea what you said.
we're teaching them suicide prevention if this bill passes, which is a good thing.
Sure.
But in another classroom, we are telling our teachers you must teach evolution and that you are made from chance and there is no God and you're just nothing and your life has no meaning. We're teaching them polar opposite things, and that is confusing to these kids. So if you really want to help these kids, he argued, you don't need the suicide prevention training. What you need is to stop teaching them evolution and basically teach them creationism and that God wants to save their lives because they have meaning.
That gave me a stress headache, immediately.
Yeah, I'll give you even one. Oh, by the way, he added, he later posted a video on Facebook saying, 10 votes turned on my testimony, saying he's responsible for 10 votes, which would have been enough to make this bill fail. I don't know if we can verify that. I don't know who the 10 people are, but that's what he says. The idea that evolution is teaching kids they don't matter or that God doesn't exist is a complete misunderstanding of how evolution is taught and what evolution is. So he's wrong about that.
And that's one thing they've been saying for forever.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
always
old creationist talking point.
Yeah.
Here's the weirdest thing about this. Not only is that a batshit crazy thing to say, this guy, his own son died of suicide a decade ago. He knows what that feels like, that tragedy. He is the one person who ought to say, I've experienced this. It's horrible. I don't want any family to go through what I went through. But he's the one making it more likely that more families will go through that tragedy.
Oof, that sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks. Fuck that guy.
Someone responded to that Facebook video saying, what the fuck are you doing? And he defended his move on Facebook. Here's what he said. And this is spelling out what he implied in that thing. I'm not going to read all of this. It's long. But he said, I state that the schools are teaching evolution, a concept that is incongruent with life having meaning and purpose. No. If we are here simply due to chance, then there is no hope, no purpose for going on, ... As we have removed God from society, suicides have increased, which is not, it's correlation, causation, fallacy. You're wrong. Yeah. That's not how anything works. One Democrat, like one of the only Democrats in Wyoming, because there's only like 3 people in Wyoming, pointed out after he said that, this is House Minority Floor Leader Kathy Connolly. She said, well, not all young people attend church if you're worried about that, like they need Jesus in their life.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do
and
for
also,
the
you can't legislate kids to find Jesus if they're feeling sad.
Yeah, and she said kids testified in front of their committees like that they wished they knew what to do. If they knew what to do, they may have behaved differently. They might have saved a life. She's saying, look, you have kids who spoke to us saying, this is a good thing. You need the suicide prevention training in the classroom because we've gone through this. We thankfully didn't take our lives. But you know what? Having this taught to us could have made a difference in how we reacted. And he didn't care about any of that. I mean, it's this... But, I'm sorry, I need to add this because I forgot to. All of this happened, I should say, in February. Oh, okay. And under the radar, I never heard about it. Under the radar for me. The only reason I heard about it is because a reporter at a site called WYO File, covering Wyoming politics, Carrie Drake, basically wrote about how much frustration there was at the end of the legislative session because nothing got done at a time when things should have gotten done, and this is one of the things they failed to deliver on.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same idea as that the right wing does with pregnancies, unwanted pregnancies, of like the best thing, and God, fucking school shootings too. Their best ideas is like, hey guys, don't do that. And if that doesn't work, they have literally nothing. Yeah. And it's, I shouldn't be shocked that they have the same idea of like, oh, are you feeling suicidal? Have you tried feeling less sad? Because that worked for me, you know? Like it's all the same bullshit. It's ugh. These people are costing lives.
Let's talk. I have a happier story.
Oh, God.
Kind of, maybe. It's not happy. I'm debating which one. Let's do the happy story first. Okay. I learned a new way to read the Bible this week that I had not thought about before.
Are there multiple ways to read a Bible?
There is.
Okay.
And now I will never not think of it this way. If you read every story in the Bible as if it's a Florida man headline, everything makes sense.
That's very good.
And on Reddit, someone said, tell me stories of the Bible as if they were Florida man headlines. Disoriented Florida man found on the beach claims to have spent the last 3 days in the stomach of a large fish. Florida man caught with bag containing 204 skins of men from his neighboring community. Reports indicate this is the same individual who killed local heavyweight celebrity by flinging a pebble at his head several years ago as a teen.
Can I do one?
Yes.
Florida man curses a tree for not providing fruit out of season.
Florida women fight over baby until Florida man threatens to cut it in half.
That's very good.
Florida man claims superhuman strength until Florida woman cuts off his mullet. It's just all the Bible stories now make sense.
Very good.
I love it.
That's great.
Do you remember that for a while we talked about this pastor? Named Stuart Allen Clark. He was from Malden, Missouri. Ran a place called First General Baptist Church. And this guy went viral about 6 weeks ago. Do you remember his sermon?
Was he the one about how he wanted to fuck one of the Trumps? Ivanka
Close.
Trump?
He said, he wanted women to lose weight to prevent their husbands from straying.
Sure.
And then he said, you should all be like Melania, the perfect woman, a trophy wife, whose husband, by the way, strayed repeatedly, and we all know this.
Multiple times, like literally while she was giving birth to her child, whatever.
He also said women, quote, don't need to look like a butch. And he also said a friend of his has put a divorce weight on his wife if she ever hits it. So anyway, that was one sermon.
On. You need to give me a second to be mad about that again.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so he made that sermon. That was the week after Valentine's Day because he's a romantic. I found out that 2 years ago, he gave a similar sermon. Like, this is not a new thing for him. He said basically a lot of the same stuff in 2018. He said, like, physical beauty is within the reach of every woman, by which he means skinny. And he has a very set notion of what that means. I would never pick on this guy's looks. He's not one to talk necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
It's the hypocrisy here.
Right.
Women need to lose weight. Now let me keep talking. So anyway, this guy gave the sermon. I posted one clip, but there was also clips floating online. The story goes viral really quickly.
Sure.
And what amazed me is the reaction to this from the church. Because they shut their shit down faster than I've ever seen any church after a pastor says something stupid.
So not like a church system, like this particular church that he preaches at?
Yes.
Interesting.
Here's what happened. Like, I posted about this dude like March 2nd, I think. I need to double check. Again, sermon was on February 21st. This guy, I posted, I think, about it on the 1st of March. On March 2nd, the church's social media shut down. Twitter is locked. Their live streamed services on YouTube channel doesn't exist. Vimeo's archives taken down. On their website, they put up a brief statement from the deacon ministry team, the church's leaders, saying, as of March 2nd, 2021, Pastor Stuart Allen Clark has taken a leave of absence and is seeking professional counseling. Interesting and vague, kind of.
Wait, this is on the heels of a 2-year-old sermon coming out?
Well, and the Melania one that came out that week.
Oh, I see.
No one was paying attention to the one 2 years ago. It's like, haha, that's our pastor.
And then we see a trend.
But when you see the trend, that's what they were responding to. But also, like, so that was the last time we talked about him, after he said he was going into professional counseling. And the questions I wanted to know are, like, one, a leave of absence is fine, but not if it's just trying to avoid the tidal wave of backlash.
Wait till everything dies down and then get back into the same thing.
Like, if he just has the same sexist beliefs, then we still got a problem.
And I'm curious to know how his beliefs differ from the church.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it that he said something that they don't believe in, or is it he said the quiet part out loud, as they keep doing?
That was another question. Like, okay, it's a leave of absence, but at some point, if he comes back or someone replaces him, is the problem that he delivered this inarticulately or that he expressed a view the church is fine with? And also, if you're seeing a professional counselor, I want to know if it's a Christian counselor who says, look, I know what you're saying is biblically accurate, but you got to say it nicer.
Yeah.
Versus a real counselor who actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, I'm very, very, very supportive of people finding therapy, but in things like this, it feels a little like, we're just going to get you an appointment with Frank, this guy who's a friend of my brother's who does therapy, and he'll sign off your thing. Be like, he's super sane.
We've seen churches that have pastors who get accused of sexual misconduct or whatever, but it's a church-sponsored investigator that looks into
investigation.
it. Yeah, and it's like, these are not reliable. There are ways to do it within the church system that are more reliable, but they weren't going those routes. Like, so again, those questions were unanswered. I have sent them emails and tweets. They did not respond to me. But whatever. Like, what are you going to do here? So for 6 weeks now, I mean, it's been 6 weeks since that happened.
Yeah.
And they've been radio silent ever since. Here's how radio silent they were. In addition to shutting down all their social media, there's a hashtag they use for their church. Like, so if you attend a service or an event, people will be like, yeah, I'm at church service. It's awesome. Hashtag whatever. I won't say it here because whatever. I don't want to spam them or something. No one was using that hashtag anymore. I don't know if it's because they weren't told about it, or they were told, like, don't use this because people are watching. Or if they just weren't doing anything, they didn't have any.
Did they have services?
I don't know. Because they weren't putting them online. Maybe they were, and quietly, and not streaming them.
Tell me again where this is.
This is Malden, Missouri. It's possible that people at the church were told, why don't you go to our neighboring churches for a little while till this dies down?
Or we're staying off social media, so if you do come to church,
yeah,
don't
tweet about it. Don't tweet it. So I've been going back to their website in all these places. I have it linked. It's in my bookmarks. Like I check it every day. Like I want to know at some point they're coming back.
Like you're checking COVID numbers and this every day.
And there's no update because they don't give you an update when the YouTube channel returns. So I'm just clicking on their website and there's been no change on the site for 6 weeks.
How much do you know about the church? Like, are there many pastors? Is there a hierarchy, or is it like a small church that was essentially just
small
him?
Church? It's just him. There is a small leadership. This is the deacons, but they belong to the General First Baptist Ministry, which is an umbrella organization, which basically put out a statement that day, and when this all went viral and said like, we oppose what he said, we're looking into whatever. Then they haven't said anything since. So anyway, last night they update the website for the first time, and I'm like, where? I didn't get the memo, but okay. It's a long statement from Stuart Allen Clark and a separate statement from the deacons. And here's the relevant part of what Stuart Allen Clark says. And again, you decide what to make of this. On Sunday, February 21st, 2021, I delivered a sermon about men's needs in the marital relationship. In the sermon, I made insensitive remarks about women and made statements deemed unbiblical. To the ladies within the church, ladies in the community, and those viewing our live stream, I want to say I am deeply sorry for any and all pain or distress that my words brought on you. I'm sorry if you felt bad. I'm not sorry. Okay. I want to say to the church that I'm truly sorry that I embarrassed you. I have no one else to blame but myself, and I own the hurt I have caused to both people inside and outside the community. ... I am meeting regularly with a professional counselor. I have secured an accountability partner, and we are and will continue to meet regularly. I recognize and understand that what I said was imprudent and discourteous. ... Whatever.
Oh, discourteous is a very gentle word.
Yeah, he's not apologizing exactly for the sentiment. Yeah, and I don't know who he's meeting with. I don't need a name. I'm not trying to harass the dude, but I don't know what type of counselor he's meeting with.
Yeah.
But also, it doesn't say that he's quitting. It doesn't say I'm not going to be pastor of this church.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not going to quit. Are you kidding?
Yeah. And then the deacon's statement, which is also long, which basically says, we bear the blame for not offering our pastor counsel, correction, and restoration when errors or inappropriate content was presented.
That's an okay apology.
Yes, if I would have felt that way if it was just that one sermon.
Sure.
But the fact that this has been going on for 2 years and no one in that church was like, maybe you shouldn't say this.
Yeah,
And again,
that's fair.
they took down their archives.
But I guess,
how many other times was this guy
I guess
saying
when I
stuff?
say it's an okay apology, it's just they're taking some responsibility for their part of what happened, which is more than this guy did.
Well, here's the next part of what they said. We are called to model Christ's love through forgiveness and restoration toward our pastor, which I think is Christianese for this guy's coming back.
Yeah.
And we support this guy coming back.
Right.
They didn't put a date on that, but it sounds like he's coming back to the pulpit, and they're setting the stage for live streaming this stuff again.
What's he going to have to do to prove that he's better?
Yeah.
We're like, actually, now I'm into curvy women. Or like genuinely, like...
Yeah, I don't know what you do.
It's not like he is sick or is like in a conspiracy hole. He just has shitty opinions, and those generally are not something that you're going to counsel yourself out of if you're not putting the work in.
Not in 6 weeks when you've been covered in the New York Times, the Daily Mail, and plenty of national news services beyond that. So I don't know. I wanted to give that update because we talked about this dude, but I have no idea what's going to happen.
Interesting. He'll be back.
He'll be back. Yeah. How that'll sound, who knows? I got a fun one for you here.
Great.
There was a pastor, Greg Farrington, who I've covered on the site a little bit. He runs Destiny Church in Rocklin, California. He's one of those COVID denying, we got to meet as a church in person no matter COVID. His wife once said face masks are meant to shut the mouth of Christians. And he says
they make everything about themselves,
it's all persecution all the time. By the way, multiple churchgoers have tested positive for COVID.
Shock.
He also blamed church closures on liberal crazies and Satan. That's this guy. So anyway, during a sermon last weekend, here's what he was trying to make the point that, God keeps records of everything you do. And one day we're all going to stand in front of him and give an account. And let me quote here. Even you, friendly atheist, one day, even though you don't believe in God, you will stand in front of the God that you don't believe in, and you will have to give an account. And he's pointing at the screen as he does this. Like, he knows.
Wait, capital F, capital A, or just...
I'm transcribing, but that's what it sounded like.
You're famous.
I don't know if he was like just a generic friendly atheist.
Yeah, I'm sure it's
for
generic,
me.
but I really like this.
But he knows I read about it.
Yeah.
So I'm in his head,
Hammond.
living rent-free, baby.
God's going to be so mad when
I
you get to
know, I'm
heaven.
so proud of myself. Here's another happier story for you, but as with all stories, it comes from a sad place. A couple years ago, the town of Krasnik in Poland, Poland's a very right-wing conservative country. It has a right-wing government, and it's super Catholic and anti-abortion and all the stuff you would expect. And a couple years ago, it was open season against LGBTQ people. And so Krasnik, a couple years ago, decided we're going to declare our town free of LGBT. Whatever that means.
Russia tried to do this in 2016, and it didn't work then either.
Yeah, I don't, like, how can you be free? First, they exist, whether you like it or not, but also, like, what? Are you banning the ideology? Are you, like, what? People can't think about? What does that mean?
Oh, it means nothing.
People were like, so it's a blanket ban on gay people living in your town? And they're like, no, that's not what it means.
Ban? They're just not here. I don't ban polar bears from my house. They just don't live here.
And they were just like, no, they're just not, we don't want it in our town. Well, anyway, the New York Times reported this week that the mayor of Krasnik is like, hey, can we have backsies on that? I'll quote from the article from Andrew Higgins of the New York Times. A French town last year severed a partnership with Krasnik in protest, and Norway, from which the mayor had hoped to get nearly $10 million starting this year to finance development projects, said in September it would not give grants to any Polish town that declared itself free of LGBT.
Yes.
Here's the mayor, Wojciech Wilk. We have become Europe's laughingstock, and it's the citizens, not the local politicians, who've suffered most. Basically, young people don't want to live there.
Yeah.
And they're all leaving.
Yeah.
And he said, Krasnik's mayor says, unless we get rid of this free of LGBT position, he has little chance of securing foreign funds to finance electric buses and youth programs, which he said are particularly important because young people keep leaving.
Oh my God. They fucked this up so hard.
And they're realizing it. And like, yeah. What did you think was going to happen?
I don't know.
Again,
I mean, did they think it would become like a straights-only safe haven? Like it's sandals for straights?
Like Alabama, I think, has gone through this. Georgia's going through it now with their racist voter suppression laws. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, you think everyone's just going to be cool? No, Will Smith is the voice of reason all of a sudden. Like, I'm not going to film my movie in Georgia.
Right.
When Major League Baseball is like, we're going to take the moral high ground here.
Yeah,
and
I don't
move
like
the
to
All-Star game.
I don't look to the MLB for like my moral superiority, so this is not a situation I'm comfortable in, but good for them.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad they recognize it. There's no sign they're going to change it because the mayor is speaking, but the city council's not.
Sure.
Like, so who knows what's going to happen?
Did you hear? I think it was McConnell said something about moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta is going to harm black people, as if he gives a fuck. Like, oh, this monster. I hate that guy.
This is a story from the Mormon Church, which has notoriously kicked out people over the years who are popular and question them.
Yes.
And it's happening right now. The person caught in the fire here is Natasha Helfer. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's a practicing Mormon. She's a convert. She wasn't always a Mormon, but she became a Mormon. She loves being a Mormon. And the thing about her practice, though, being a licensed marriage and family therapist, is she's been really outspoken about wanting to provide comprehensive and accurate sex education for practicing Mormons because she believes they don't learn this stuff in church. Like, it's one of those, you're supposed to be abstinent until marriage. And they don't teach you about, the Mormon Church is anti-gay. Like, they oppose gay marriage. They oppose marriage equality. They oppose trans people. And she's like, no, but there's nothing wrong with being gay. And I want to teach that to you and whatever. Like, she would argue her teaching does not go against the teachings of the church. Because she's not saying, you should be... Actually, I take that back. She does support marriage equality, but that doesn't mean the Mormon Church has to support those marriages necessarily.
But what is the Mormon Church's anti-LGBTQ stance based off of?
Similar, I think, to the Catholic Church as well, which is just, this is wrong and we feel icky about it.
Okay, so it's not like John Smith?
No, not even close. Joseph Smith.
That certainly was close. It's like Joseph Smith brought out those tablets and was like, "Oh my God!" He said, "God hates facts. I can't believe it."
You're asking me to give you specifics on the Mormon teachings, and I'm going to screw that up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But here's the letter they sent to her after years of being very outspoken on this issue. They sent her a letter recently that basically says, we need to talk. Oh, and that is the Mormon way of saying this is the first step on the road to kicking you out for good.
Right.
Excommunicating you. They boil down, here are the 5 problems we have with what you're doing.
Okay.
1, you support marriage equality. But that's not weird. There's a lot of Mormons who support marriage equality and oppose the Catholic Church's teachings on that subject. Like, usually even the Mormon Church is like, fine, we're not going to be mad unless you act on it.
Yeah.
But just supporting marriage equality under the law, that's not weird.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense that that's what they're mad about. Number 2, she says masturbation is normal and healthy and not a sin because those are the best practices of her professional career, like her profession, which is true. And the Mormon Church doesn't teach that. And she's like, yeah, but there's nothing wrong with it and it's fine. Like, you are not weird if you think you feel good. Like, she teaches that. Yeah. And the Mormon Church is like, how could you do that? So that's number 2. Number 3, she doesn't oppose sexually explicit materials. So she says, look, addiction may be one thing, but if you watch porn, that's not the weirdest thing in the world.
Right.
And they're like, how dare you say that? Again, in line with the best practices and academic research in her profession.
Right.
She's been critical of church leaders, which join the freaking club.
Me too.
What do you expect? And then number 5, they said she's urging people to leave the Mormon Church, which she denies. She's like, I want to stay in the church. Why would I be telling people to leave? But she does teach people look, you got to choose your own path and do what's right for you. So anyway, they sent her a letter saying, we want to have a talk about this. That talk is coming I think next week. Ooh. And again, she doesn't want to leave. It's one thing if she was trying to lead a movement out of the church. Right. She's not. She's like, I want to stay. And I don't think teaching you good therapy, good practices, should be against what God teaches.
I respect her a lot for trying. She clearly has a lot of love for the Mormon Church, and I really respect that she is trying to improve it from within.
Yeah.
And I have all my fingers and toes crossed that she makes some leeway, but
I know there's a lot of atheists who hear this and they're just like, get the hell out. Why are you trying to stay in the church that supports all these awful things? Right. But again, I think that's the wrong framing here if you're an atheist. I think the thinking is, here's someone who does believe and she wants to stay in the church and she is also a science person.
Right.
And she doesn't see she doesn't see any incompatibility.
Right.
Francis Collins, who runs the National Institutes of Health, same sort of thing. He's an evangelical Christian, and he's also a really fine scientist, all things considered.
Right.
I want that guy. If he's going to be a Christian, fine, debate aside. I want that guy there because he's trying to figure out a way to get more evangelicals to support science, and he's the guy they'll listen to, maybe.
Right.
So again, I think by maybe kicking her out of the church, I feel like the Mormon Church is doing everything it can to push more people out.
Of course.
They could easily say, look, we welcome you in our fold, and whatever, our church's teachings are different from your professional ones, but you know what? We want to keep you here. They could have said nothing. Instead, they're going to drive people out.
It really does drive me crazy that they act like they're doing a favor. The Catholic Church, you can be gay if you want to go to our church. You just can't talk about it or act on it or live that way or anything else. But we welcome you with open arms.
With big quote hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's a quick one that's gotten no attention yet, but this just happened this week too. I'll tell you a story here. In 2017, a guy named Rafael Sanchez began working for L'Oreal, the makeup company. Okay. And basically his job was to go to department stores, retail stores, go to the makeup counter, and if customers came and they wanted to know, like, how does this look or what should I buy, he did the demonstrations. He worked with them to figure out what makeup would look good on them. As far as I can tell, that he's right for the job. He likes the job. He wanted to do it. All was good. In 2018, early 2018, L'Oreal, the company, or at least the subcontractor they hired where they got this guy from, told him, we need you to go to the department store Lord & Taylor. You're going to work there and do the makeup counter there. And his supervisor was a woman named Viviana Nunez. And basically, under her supervision, and he was under her supervision at a variety of places for the next several months, basically all of his colleagues were like, oh, watch out for her. She proselytizes. She's a preachy sort of person. And he's a gay atheist. And he's like, I can handle it. I've been through this before. But this week he filed a federal lawsuit against L'Oreal, basically saying she kept trying to convert me, preach to me. I told you about it. You did nothing. And it got bad. And here's an example of what I mean. This is from the lawsuit directly. During the first few days of a pop-up store opening, Nunez asked him, do you believe in God? When he responded that he was an atheist, she began proselytizing Christianity to him. Nunez repeatedly cited passages from the Bible to the plaintiff, demanding that he start going to church with her, and instructed him that he needed to repent for his sins. Later on, Nunez, this is later in the lawsuit, she found out he was gay and HIV positive, to which she responded that having HIV meant that plaintiff had been, quote, a little whore and, quote, promiscuous as a gay man. And then later on, she says, I must be honest with you, your homosexuality is a virus. You know your homosexuality is a virus. And they would have to, quote, have to work around it by maybe having him marry a woman. Like, it gets worse. She starts calling him slurs against gay people.
No.
And again, he calls L'Oreal multiple times. They never get back to him. He filed a lawsuit against them. We'll see what happens here. I don't know how this plays out. This is in New York City where the lawsuit is filed. You remember, like a couple weeks ago, we talked about a pagan employee at Panera Bread who said, I wasn't talking about it, but when my colleagues, my bosses found out I was pagan, they started doing the same thing. Right. And we're still waiting for an update on her case. This is the sort of thing you would think in New York City, of all places, an openly gay person, an open atheist wouldn't have to deal with this stuff. Yeah. But again, this is the reality for so many people.
That's frustrating.
That's it. It's just frustrating.
Yeah, I'm really glad he's filing a lawsuit. That's a great stuff.
This one made me laugh. The MyPillow guy, Mike Lindell, he is creating an alternative to Twitter, because this is what conservative Christians do when something is popular. We'll create a shitty alternative version that becomes an echo chamber. By the way, it was supposed to launch this week. It did not launch this week.
What's it called?
Frank.
That's it? Oh, I thought you were going to say Frank something.
It's called Frank. I think the website is frankspeech.com or something. It's called Frank because it's all about free speech. We're all frank here with each other. So his whole thing is Twitter censors conservatives, which it does not. And he's like, but my Twitter will be all about free speech. And then during an interview, they were like, wow, free speech. And here's what he says. People ask me, you're going to let everything go? Porn, swearing, everything? And I said, absolutely not. ... Get this. This Judeo-Christian platform we're going to have here, they go by biblical principles. You're not going to be able to swear. There will be 4 words for sure you can't say. You can't say the C word, the N word, the F word, and you can't use God's name in vain.
The C word, the N word is a surprise in that
I like that he had
gathering.
to say that because otherwise it totally would have happened.
100%. C word, N word,
F word.
F slur.
And you can't say goddamn.
Huh. All right.
So you can't criticize his personal brand of mythology, and also you can't swear. But
you can say shit, but not cunt.
Yeah, and I think if you want to call like Joe Biden like a terrorist, you would get away with that.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
fine. That's what he means by
Yeah.
free speech. If you want to say Trump won the election, that's fine.
That's free speech also.
But don't you dare criticize God.
Ew, speaking of free speech, just really quick sidebar. Did you see the Jim Jeffries? Who was yelling at the Ohio senator who was yelling at Fauci today? Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan, yeah.
Did you happen to see that?
I did catch that. That was last night, wasn't it?
I just saw it this morning. And literally he was just screaming at Dr. Fauci about how Dr. Fauci personally destroyed the First Amendment in the United States. And Dr. Fauci he's like, nobody in Ohio could go to each other's houses. And he was like, no, we never said it was just a CDC recommendation. He's like, but church though. It was bad, and Maxine Waters told him to shut the hell up or shut his mouth or something like that. It was great.
Anytime anyone's telling Jim Jordan to shut up is a good thing.
Day.
Oh, speaking of which, I don't even have this in my notes because it was just silly. Pat Robertson, of all people, is the guy...
anti-cub.
Yeah, like, of all the things you expect Pat Robertson to get right, and I should say, he has previously said incarcerating people over marijuana use is stupid. He has said young earth creationism is stupid. Like every couple of years he says something and you're like, wait, what?
His hit rate is low, but it's not zero.
Right. And so this week he's like, this is a gun, this is a taser. They're different. They feel different. They look different.
How do you not know
How do you not know the difference? And he's like, I'm not anti-cop, but seriously, cop, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And I believe W. Kamau Bell is like, when did Pat Robertson become woke?
No kidding. Yeah, he's like the definition of a broken clock.
I should say, if you watch the full episode of the 700 Club from this week, like, he says other crazy shit later in the same episode.
Sure.
As you would expect, but on
we're
that
not welcoming him into our particular fold, but like, do your work, Pat.
It's one of those, he's not the voice of reason, but he was a voice of reason for like 37 seconds, and you take what you can get with him.
Yep.
He's 91 years old.
God.
Still
I can't
kicking.
believe he's still kicking. How often is 700 Club once a month or once a week rather?
Every damn day.
Is it really?
He doesn't appear on Friday, and he sometimes takes some weeks off, but like he's there.
Genuinely, we've been recording for an hour, and I
watch it every day. And on Tuesday, it was just an hour of people asking him questions and him just talking. And he always has horrible answers, and some of them are just weird. And you're like, why, if you have a question, would you ask Pat Robertson for advice? And then you realize, oh, right, there are this many people who genuinely want their advice from Pat Robertson.
That's wild.
Here's one from Iowa. This was surprising to me, too. Iowa's governor is Kim Reynolds. She's awful on COVID. She is Republican. She's everything you would expect from a right-wing governor. But it turns out this week there was a fundraiser. Was it this week? Maybe this month. But there was a fundraiser for the Des Moines Christian School, a specific place. She's been a fan of it for a while. And basically they asked people, can you make a donation of some kind that we can auction off to raise money for the school? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Is it a public school or private school?
Private school,
okay.
Private Christian school. Kim Reynolds donated a dinner with her, which is fine. That's a thing celebrities, political celebrities included.
I have no idea who Kim Reynolds is. I think I might have zoned out for
a governor,
part of this.
Governor of Iowa.
Thank you. Sorry.
She auctioned off a dinner with herself and her husband.
Cool.
It would be for 8 people. Figured that will go for some money. I mean, and you know what? If she did it as a private citizen, it's dinner at her house, whatever. Okay, fine. But it's dinner with her and her husband at the governor's mansion. And she's saying, like, when they advertise this, it's dinner with the governor, not Kim Reynolds, the private citizen who likes what we do. So it's literally like donating a state location.
Sure, a state event.
At a state event with the state official. Again, that's the issue here. She's doing this in her professional capacity, not her private capacity.
Right.
And again, there's so many questions that come up. One is, who's paying for the food? Yeah. What about the staffing costs when you're at the governor's mansion? Like, Are taxpayers paying for that?
Sounds like Iowa's footing the bill.
Yeah. The Freedom from Religion Foundation sent a letter to the office basically saying you can't use your position as governor or the mansion to fundraise for a private religious school. I don't know what could happen. I don't know what you can do about this at this point unless people want to fight about it. But again, it's like the bare minimum, and she still won't do it. By the way, that auction was won for $30,100. All going to that Christian school, tax-free.
Huh. Welp.
Yeah. I got one.
Do you think anyone would pay $30,000 to have dinner with us?
They should. They should just give $30,000 a month on Patreon. And listen, I will send them what they want for dinner.
If you give us $30,000 a month, once a month, I will show up at your house and cook you dinner. And guess what? I'm a really fucking good cook.
And if you give $50,000, she won't.
Okay? I'm very talented.
I got one last one for you. I'll end it on a happy note.
Yeah.
Professor Ryan P. Verge, who's awesome on statistics and gathering data, he tweeted something out this week that I found interesting, and it actually similar to 2018, but I hadn't seen this back then. If you ask people what are the largest religious voting blocks in the United States, as a proportion not of like 80% of white evangelicals voted for Republican. That's the number we're kind of used to seeing.
Sure.
But like as a percentage of America, like,
I see.
I'll give you this. White evangelicals who vote Republican represent 13.1% of America. 13.1% of America are white evangelicals who vote for Republicans.
And every law we pass, we have to run by those nerds.
Yeah. But you know what's higher than 13.1% as a single block? Non-religious Democrats.
No.
Yeah, if you add up the 4.8% of atheist Democrats and the 3.8% of agnostic Democrats and the 9% of nuns who are Democrats, you get a number that is higher than 13.1. What is it, 17 something? I didn't add it. 17.6% if you add those all up.
Non-religious
now
Democrat.
Again,
okay.
Those are just Democrats who are non-religious. Like, there's more of us than them. But the thing is, they are a solid block. Like
Correct.
those 13.1% of white evangelical Republicans, they show the hell up on election day.
Yes.
We don't even like each other.
We're pretty busy getting in Twitter wars with each other. It takes up a lot of our day.
So the question is, how do you corral these Democratic nuns and actually do something with it? But the takeaway for me is that if you're a Democrat, we are the largest voting bloc, if you want to call us a religion, which is philosophically a no.
Right.
But if you want to call us a religion, we are the biggest bloc for you. Like mainline Protestants who are Democrats are 4.5%. 2.8% of white evangelical Democrats. Those are all small potatoes.
Yeah.
We are almost a fifth of your entire base here, the nuns. And Democratic candidates don't have to say atheism rules. No, but they could easily say, I support church-state separation.
Sure.
I'm going to make policy based on the best available scientific data. And I'll use science and reason to guide my path forward. That is a winning message. And that doesn't even necessarily offset white evangelicals.
Yeah, I do think...
Or offend them. Or
The problem with that is white evangelicals are kind of a top-down organization, and so it's a little bit easier.
You can go to church. You could find them. You can get them to vote for you.
Right, and you can disseminate a message pretty easily if you're talking church leadership and say, okay, this week we're all going to talk about how immigrants are destroying America.
What are they going to do? Hey, Richard Dawkins, we need you to tweet out a support for us. And everyone's like, screw you and your candidates.
Yeah, we are both ornery and like herding cats. Like, it's not... gathering us together is not a particularly easy feat.
Yeah. So that's the existential challenge when it comes to atheists and politics, which is how do you reach us, even if we're on your side? But again, I'm not even saying they need to reach out to us per se, other than just talk about this stuff on the trail.
Yes.
You could easily, if you're non-religious, I can understand strategically. It might be bad to say that depending on where you're trying to get votes. But again, even Joe Biden can go on the campaign trail, include us in the message, non-religious Americans, secular Americans, and talk about, yeah, I'm Catholic, but I am driven by the science. I support a woman's right to choose, which he has done. I will overturn these things that give special access privilege to religious right groups, and he has done that. Like, those are not hard positions to sell, and they ought to appeal to people who are religious too. So this is a winning message. And I should say, in 2018, those numbers were pretty similar. It's actually gotten better for us, but we're getting to the point where more and more people are not religious or swayed by religious arguments. And so these are, politicians should pay attention.
And religion's been on the decline for the last 20 years, and eventually politicians are going to have to figure out how their campaigns are going to look if they can't reliably preach to, forgive the pun, preach to the choir.
Yeah.
So
that's all I got.
Cool.
Oh, so many things.
How do you feel? We're in person.
It was nice.
It's weird making eye contact with you. I
know.
don't think I liked it.
I don't understand this being around other humans thing.
Hey, if you are looking for something else to listen to, my interview with Tyler Meesom is up on the main feed. He is a documentarian who recently came out with the miniseries doc, Murder Among the Mormons, which was incredible. I've gotten a few tweets from people who listen, because I absolutely think you should watch the show before you listen to the podcast. It will make very little sense if you don't, because there's a lot of twists and turns. And I've had a few really positive things of like, oh, I was meaning to watch it, and then I watched it so I could listen to this, and I loved it. I'm like, yeah, because it's very good. He's very talented. So yeah, you can find that on the main feed.
Yep. Where do we find you?
I am on Twitter at Jess Blumke. You can also find me on Etsy at Bitches Get Stitched Done if you'd like to order something. How about you? I
am at friendlyatheist.com. Go to Twitter at HemmettMeta. Go to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast. Support the show.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.